Good evening. If you do have a mobile, if you'd like to put it on silent, please, thank you. A huge welcome back to Steve Mera, BSc, Chief Executive Officer of Phenomenon Online magazine, author, paranormal researcher, and a lot more. Tonight, Steve's talk is on human origins and the Bigfoot connection. Human origins usually bounce around between being created in a few days, whatever a day means in this context, by one creator, and us evolving in stages from something in water to something crawling around, to apes and finally us, supplied by Charles Darwin, who was interested in birds' beaks, amongst other things. And then up pops the interventionist idea, and Lloyd Pye springs to mind. But Steve, using his investigatory skills, explores another angle that most won't have spotted. Please welcome Steve Mera.
Thank you for having me, Rob. It's been a while since I've been here. Obviously been busy with a number of different projects, but it's a relatively new lecture. I've been conducting some research because if you actually look through the internet, it's mad crazy in regarding theories of evolution. Are aliens responsible for mankind being on Earth? And of course, what I wanted to do is, I wanted to introduce kind of a twofold lecture, really. It's, as you can tell from the title, the human origins mystery and the Bigfoot connection. So there's kind of two things in one. And I do believe they actually do go together, because a lot of people just talk separately on these lectures, but don't actually put the two together. And I think it's deserved to put these two things together. So first of all, as Rob mentioned, the infamous Charles Darwin always comes to mind in regarding the evolution theory. And there was a commemoration from 1809 to 2009. Some years ago, I went to London in 2009 to commemorate this bicentennial. And at a London museum, I talked to the curator because they had this very large stand, and you've probably seen these sort of things from monkey to man. You've probably seen the images, but they actually do have proper kind of stuffed monkeys and all the way up to man on this very large set. And I asked the curator, I said to him, are we still going with this? You know, is this still current? And he kind of, it was interesting because he kind of looked over his shoulder and looked around and went, well, we can't replace it until we've got something better. And I thought that was an interesting, very, very interesting comment. And that kind of led me to think, okay, it might not be as hard-cut as we generally think, you know, it's not everything that we've been told might not necessarily be the answer. This is a stereotypical thing that we often see, from monkey to man, okay? And I wish it was that simple, you know, because this is what we teach our kids in school. This is the same thing that appears in the textbooks. It's the same sort of things that people are taught academically in the field of evolution. But to be honest with you, the evidence doesn't support it. It does not support it whatsoever. But until we can change things, until we can get people to make that decision, to put out the right and correct information, this seems to be the picture that fits. So we're told, I mean, from some of the early work of Lloyd Pye, which Rob mentioned, he was a very good friend of mine, and his research was very, very good. He was very thorough. It states our solar system was a cloud of dust and gas. It was a swirling disk that eventually separated into the sun, various planets, the moons, asteroids, comets, you name it. Now, this scenario could be accurate. We're not around to know, to document. How are we supposed to know? We've got biblical scriptures, say everything was done in 7 days in the Christian Bible. Of course, I think that was a lot longer, whatever day, like Rob mentioned, what a day represents. Was it the 24 hours? Probably not, and maybe not. But it does seem to be, the more you study this now, more commonly, and more up-to-date information coming forward, suggesting that sound was involved in the creation of the universe. Sound is a process that precedes light. There's evidence to support sound precedes light now. and can also travel faster than the speed of light, which is interesting. Sound that travels faster than the speed of light. These are new discoveries, so even this idea is changing over time. However, gravity is not, as taught by academics, the driving force in the solar system of the universe for that matter. It would seem to be electromagnetic, and electric forces clearly rule the cosmology. Let's not get into dark matter and dark energy. I mean, that's another subject which is just creeping in, which is making us change our beliefs and structure in regards to these scientific endeavours to gain these answers. Now, around about 3.5 billion years ago, this is what we're pretty much taught. Throughout its first billion years, Earth was most likely just a mass of molten lava, continually bombarded by a rain of asteroids, some of them micro-asteroids, and other asteroid bodies, large and small, and this pretty much pelted the Earth on a regular basis. 3.5 to 2.5 billion years ago, we're told during its second billion years, Earth would have cooled into masses of land with seas and of condensed steam venting from numerous volcanoes, some of which are still very prominent across the Earth. By 2 billion years ago, this cooling process would have actually been completed. Now, this is what the scientists are telling us, okay? But it would seem, from the information that we've gathered over the years, especially over the last 10 years, might suggest that Earth is older than we initially thought, and that humanity might actually even be older than we're actually being told. And there may be good reason to do so. And this is generally what we're taught, the academic road to life. The picture on the left represents the reality, the organic molecules that do exist. However, in nature, they don't spontaneously reassemble into ever more complex molecules. So, biological dogma insists the stroll down yellow brick road of scientific imagination had to occur this way because cell components do exist and must be accounted for in a natural way. Now, what is natural about spontaneous life occurring? How does it occur? You saw the chicken or the egg scenario, isn't it? What came first, the creator or the experiment itself? Now, Fred Hoyles, he's quite a famous British astrophysicist. He had a quote which was quite well known. It was travelling around the internet. It was mentioned in his books. He's mentioned it in a number of lectures. And he said the likelihood of organic molecules spontaneously assembling themselves into a living organism, this is the very first organism, remember, on the planet Earth, we're told, is equal to the likelihood of a tornado sweeping through a junkyard and correctly assembling a Boeing 747. Now, reading that, it lets you think that, well, there's probably a little bit more to creating the first biological life form on planet Earth rather than just the random events that seem to throw these things together. How did it come to be? It goes on to say even bacteria and the smallest living organisms are incredibly complex. Well, they are. They're incredibly complex. How does something suddenly derive from nowhere? The earliest life form were known as prokaryotes. Now, this is a prokaryote, as you can see. You can see its DNA within inside. Prokaryotes are a single cell bacteria with no nucleus to hold their DNA. They exist in two types, archaea and true bacteria. Now, we do know over recent times that bacteria is very, very resistant to all sorts of things. It can survive in space. It can survive extreme temperatures near the sun. It can survive extreme temperatures of the coldness of space. Numerous scientists which have conducted tests in Antarctica have drilled down to the core rock a good mile down and brought that up, and there is frozen bacteria within the rock. Only several days later, they became alive. They've been in some form of hibernation for millions of years, and then when brought to the surface, only 3 days later, they decided to spring back to life again. So it just goes to show how resistant these things are. Many forms of each can survive in extreme environments. Some live in salt, others live in sulphur, some in methane, others at incredible temperatures of heat and cold, under grinding pressures at the bottom of the ocean, right at the bottom of the deepest oceans. They're pretty much indestructible, these things. And they're able to exist and thrive in the planetary environment and not even in the universe. So they could be out there. There is this theory of what is referred to as this bacterial soup of life floating around in space. And this is known as a panspermia theory. And that planets may have been populated by life from out of space, because it's already out there, and it may be a passing meteor flown through. It picked some of these up, these microbes, and came crashing down to planet Earth, only to cause its first form of bacterial life to derive. Because there's no other way, there's no other mechanism on Earth for life to suddenly start. Where did these prokaryotes come from? God. Some people do say God. Whatever that is, also another representation. Now, the miracle of prokaryotes. The first life on Earth should have been quite small, biologically simple, exist only in one form, and appear when Earth was cool enough for molecules to spontaneously combine and hold together. Now, prokaryotes defy all that. They don't fit into that bill whatsoever. They first appeared in the fossil record around about 4 billion years ago, when Earth was newly formed. Appear is the operative word here. They simply came out of nowhere, because there's no evidence to say prior to that. They just suddenly are here. Came from nowhere into just one of two distinct forms that dominated the planet for 2 billion years. The two were this is the second one, the eukaryotes. Now these appeared around about 2 billion years ago. So now you've got the prokaryotes and the eukaryotes. Okay, two of them. These are much larger, the eukaryotes. Far more complex as a single cell bacteria. Their DNA was contained in a nucleus. They appear as suddenly as the prokaryotes did, from nowhere. Now it's strange enough having one particular bacteria to turn up when we don't know where the hell it's come from, but to have another one suddenly turn up which is completely different, so they haven't evolved, is the operative word here, from the prokaryote to the eukaryote. It's just another life form has just appeared. Scientists would have us believe that they arose when larger prokaryotes ate smaller ones, and after so, all somehow kind of agreed to live together symbiotically. So in other words, what the basic saying is that why would they peacefully coexist for 2 billion years, followed by cannibalization on a huge scale? Something still doesn't fit the bill. Now, we do know from the story of Charles Darwin that he travelled around the earth, and he most of the time he spent in Galapagos Islands, and yes, and Rob was right when he said earlier that he did have a fascination with birds of the feathered nature. Beaks was his main thing, and he looked at these different types of birds, mostly finches, and he noticed from different parts of the island that finches come in different colours, fair enough, like most birds do, but their beaks did alter depending on what they were feeding on. In other words, they had adaptation take place because, for instance, some finches ate small bugs, some finches ate some plants, some nuts and things like that. So their beaks altered depending on what their lifestyle was and what the food source was. And he said, hey, this is it. This is the evidence of evolution.